I'm not going to go through the whole normal routine whenever somebody makes a video about this topic because I'm sure everybody watching this has already seen the same monologue at least a couple times already. The game's gotten more robotic, players have less flair, and blah, blah, blah. All right, sure, we get it, I guess. To be fair, there was that stretch for a few years recently where there was a dip in flashy rising stars and talents after the golden generation. They're not wrong about that. We already talked about this in that video earlier this year about the missing generation. Now, though, that era kind of seems to be slowly on the way out. And it might not seem that way because so many people are still hung up on how insane the golden generation was, but there's more and more of those exciting players breaking out and peaking around European football. A few years ago, let's be real, there wasn't that many for a little while, and a lot of people found themselves really only keeping up with their own clubs and the standard big clubs, which is part of what led to the whole football fell off thing in the first place. Things had gotten a bit stale. Current football still has its issues, obviously. Players are being ran through the dirt with these ridiculous schedules. The number of games and the proximity of the matches are insane, and players' legs are done by February and March. The takeover of rigid tactics is still a thing, and it also affects the whole flashy football thing. But aside from that, there was simply less insane talent for a little while, which is normal. Every sport has its ups and downs in terms of entertainment. Basketball had the dead ball era when scoring was at all-time lows and games were unbearably slow. It's still viewed as one of the worst basketball eras ever, despite having superstars like Kobe, AI, Shaq, T-Mac, and plenty others peaking or starting to peak during that time. Defense and physicality absolutely dominated the league during this period from the late 90s to the mid-2000s, similar to how physicality has kind of taken over modern football. There was a good 5 to 7 years where skill wasn't exactly the biggest priority in the league. What mattered most was how good you were at beating up and putting bodies on the other team. The main thing you could point to blame for this was the rules at the time. There was a short period where they took away the illegal defense rule while hand checking was still allowed, and during that overlap, shit got wild. Combine that with how much physicality refs allowed back then, and you get the idea. Stars were getting beat up, games were low scoring, and everybody was bored. So what changed? Well, teams simply figured things out. Hand checking being banned made it easier, but teams also started shooting more and more. The three-point revolution that the Warriors get credited for was already happening before they took over. It was just happening more slowly. Curry sped it up by an insane amount. If I were to compare it to football, I'd say the big tactical shift is their version of the NBA's rule changes that brought the dead ball era. Pep wannabes, possession football, and back-passing wingers. Sure, there were still a few star boys on the come-up, and some of them were definitely entertaining, but there was overall noticeably less flair players that were showboating and pulling out tricks and flicks and skills that had fans on their toes. I get it. Before that, people were tuning into QPR games for Tarup and West Ham games for Payet. JJ spent a large chunk of his best years at Bolton, and he still gets talked about like an old-timer just because of how exciting he was. Quaresma was one of the most exciting talents that fall into the entertainer category. He's still known for his Trevellas. There was Riquelme too. You could probably go on for ages about older players that were flashy or exciting. The game did sorely miss that entertainer archetype just because of how sharp the drop-off was in terms of how many there were left around Europe after the golden generation. And of course, that's not a knock on the players that are more efficient output demons. Y'all know I have love for them too. I glaze them all the time. But there gotta be a balance, or else fans who prefer the flair will end up being turned away from the sport, and that's kind of what ended up happening. The players that attempted the most outrageous dribbles, even if they were often ill-advised, players that refused to play safe and charged into countless take-ons over and over instead of passing back. There were some players that were outrageous every week and became some of the best and most exciting players in the world, and then there were players that probably were too inconsistent to make it at a big club, but at their best, they'd put on ridiculous shows on the pitch. Then there was the young, exciting stars that had people tuning in from across the world, even if they weren't at a Bayern or a Madrid-level club yet. The peak of that is easily Neymar. I don't think we'll ever see a wonder kid like that again. Even if you think Yamal is better at 17 than Neymar was at 17, which is a pretty fair opinion considering what Yamal is doing in a top 3 league in the world at that age, there was still a large difference in terms of star power and the pull that Neymar had. Top 10 in the Ballon d'Or rankings while playing for Santos is just nonsensical. He had niggas that couldn't even name 5 Brazilian clubs locked in like they were from the favelas. Currently, there is an entertainer renaissance going on around Europe though, and PSG and Barcelona are leading that charge. Those two represent the two best ways to revive a club after the loss of a superstar, through smart spending and through the academy. Barca don't have the smart spending trait downloaded all the way, at least not all the time, but their academy might as well be a superstar factory. Some would say Barcelona are lucky, but we've talked about La Masia before and how it isn't really luck that they produce so many stars. Originally, they did a terrible job at preparing for Messi and their other legends' exits. No replacements for players like Busquets and awful salaries that pulled them further into debt. La Masia once again rescued them though. blessed them with Balde, Kubarsi, Gavi, Fermin, and of course Lamine Yamal. PSG, on the other hand, completed one of the greatest instant rebuilds ever. Everyone, including me, thought they'd be in the dumps for at least a little while after Mbappe left, especially when we saw who they drew for the UCL group stage. It just seemed like the football guys hated them niggas. But they handled the whole thing incredibly. Platformed Bradley Barcola as their Mbappe replacement on the left, moved Dembele central where he started thriving, and signed Kvaratskhelia mid-season. Best of all, they have an absolute unicorn in Desiree Doué that they signed last summer who can play any position in the attack and is one of the most skilled 19-year-olds I've ever watched with my own two eyes. Now they're one of the most terrifying teams in Europe, and they've brought back that feeling of excitement on a UCL night when you know you're going to watch something special every time they suit up. They've blitzed almost every team they've played since the start of 2025, especially Premier League teams. That 1-1 win on penalties scoreline versus Liverpool does not tell the real story. They were absolutely plowing them in France. Liverpool scrambling out of there with a 1-0 win was nasty work. Slot was probably cackling on his way out the stadium. Kvara deadass made McAllister twerk, bruh. They had their foot on their neck. There was one point early in the Villa game where Kvara and Doué switched wings for no reason, and they kept switching back and forth. They're too versatile, bruh. That PSG attack has insane speed, insane skill, flair, versatility, and overall talent. The 2023 season, I was really only checking in on their league games to watch Mbappe. Now I'm making sure I check their schedule in advance to make time to watch their games every week for like 7 different players, because that midfield is no joke either. Then you have Yamal in Barcelona. Yamal is currently the best entertainer in the world, in my opinion, and it shouldn't be much of an argument. He already came out and said that entertaining is his priority in response to the talk about his low goal-scoring numbers, and he's proved it. His numbers don't really fully represent how good he's been, because his stretch to start the calendar year has been one of the best stretches by any player in the world this season if you actually turn the games on. The other attackers missing the chances he's been creating from thin air doesn't change that. Just a few days ago against Dortmund, he created both of Lewandowski's goals, but didn't get an assist for either before finally scoring. The one goal he scored does not give that performance his full dues. He was unbelievable. Every week, sometimes multiple times a week, he's out there humiliating grown men, and even though he doesn't always get something on the score sheet to show for it, don't worry, Lamine, we see you, gang. Sticking with Barcelona for a moment here, I have to mention Olmo, who was touched by the football technique gods as a baby, but then he also got touched by the can't stay healthy for more than 3 weeks in a row devil at the same time. He's fragile as fuck, but boy, them fragile legs can work. It's a shame he's made of soggy toilet paper because his touch, his technical ability, his skill is off the charts. I have a whole video already dick riding Pedri. I don't think I really need to rehash why I love watching him. That Atletico semifinal a little while back just reiterated the point. Just pretty to watch, but also not pointless at all. He completely took over the game and held Atletico at bay late when they were pressing for an equalizer. Moving away from the entertainer topic a little bit, it's kind of funny because you see Barcelona and PSG and how they rebuilt their clubs, and you wonder why so many Premier League clubs can't do the same. Arsenal's the only big Prem team that have recently completed a full rebuild, and it took a few years. Say what you want about trophies, but the fact of the matter is they were ass and barely making top 10 5 years ago, and now they're consistent title contenders and late-stage UCL participants. That's a full rebuild. The rebuild was kicked off by the academy, led by Saka and Emile, and then pushed into full effect by smart spending. Odegaard for 35 million euros, Timber for 40, Gabriel for 26, Saliba for 30. It was a textbook multi-year rebuild, and all it's missing is a big trophy to complete it. Now Arsenal have a top squad with multiple academy stars like Nwaneri, MLS, and Dauman on the way to keep the club from falling off again when the current players start aging or leave. Other Prem clubs just can't seem to do the same. The last excellent rebuild before Arsenal's I can recall is Liverpool under Klopp. Post-Suarez, Liverpool was actually disgusting. And not Neymar dribbling disgusting. More like 6 p.m. gym smell disgusting. They rebuilt through absolutely perfect spending and selling, buying Salah and Mane, selling Coutinho, and getting VVD and Alisson in return. Within a few seasons, they were one of Europe's most formidable teams. Sometimes clubs get saved from awful periods by just making one big pivotal signing like Madrid with Ronaldo, or they're saved by an academy player, but it doesn't always work out well if the supporting signings suck. Pullman was supposed to be the Chelsea savior, and it looked like he would be for a while, but the overall squad is simply ass, and now that he's gone through a tough spell of his own, Chelsea look nowhere near making a return to one of Europe's best. United? I don't even know what to say about that one anymore. They went through all the phases of failed rebuilds, from the academy star in Rashford to the young exciting attack in Martial, Rashford, and Lingard, to the supposed superstar savior in Pogba, to the return of an old legend in Ronaldo, to yet another rebuild, and now they're stuck with one of their worst teams ever, if not the worst. No, this is definitely the worst, I think, factually, like statistically. It feels like some clubs get so caught up in either trying to be too smart when it comes to transfers like Chelsea with their ridiculous contracts they were doing a little while ago, or not smart enough and just buying bullshit like United. Despite the fact that Dortmund is viewed as a stepping stone club with no spine, you have to respect the fact that they constantly rebuild and repeat the cycle damn near every few years after losing their stars. They're an intelligent business team, even if they do get their best players snatched all the time. Anyways, we kind of went a bit off topic there. PSG and Barcelona are leading the charge, but there's plenty of others across Europe with entertainers of their own. Ryan Cherki is one of the most talented young players in the world, bruh. This guy had me checking Lions' schedule every week. He's completely unpredictable. You never really know where he's going to pull out his duffel. He's always doing some kind of fancy shit. I know it sounds kind of weird, but his beard and his haircut deadass fit his playstyle. It's kind of weird that clubs aren't at war for his attention, but we do got to remember that he's more of a traditional classic attacking midfielder, and that archetype isn't exactly the most successful in the modern game. There was also some talk about him having attitude issues or whatever. I don't know. I really don't give a damn. That don't got nothing to do with me. As long as he keep doing them slick-ass back heels, I don't care. City's having a bit of a shitter season, but they have Savinho and Doku. Doku's been bonkers, I can't lie. He's averaging almost 7 dribbles per 90 at 65% success rate in the league. Even though his final ball and his decision-making isn't the best, he's crazy to watch. City wasn't really known for being the most exciting team in the world in terms of flair during their peak Pep years, and everyone was moaning about how their perfect possession football and their hundreds of thousands of passes was boring, and how Pep killed off the spark in players like Grealish. I find it kind of funny that now that they have a couple flair players, they fucking suck. I don't know. They had Sane and I guess Bernardo Silva, and before that David Silva too, so I wouldn't say it's a direct correlation, but the fact of the matter is they were at their best when Pep was more rigid tactically. Now Rodri's out and their superstars declined, and he can't be as stiff with his tactics anymore because he doesn't have that same world-class player machine that made the whole thing tick. Mbappe is an obvious one despite his inconsistency this season. I still think his best days were around 2021 and 2022, but he's still shown flashes this year. Vinny hasn't been that great, but on his good days, he's still a great watch. Michael Olise has been electric on the wing for Bayern, and it's not just the dribbling. He's also been elite overall when it comes to playmaking, even if we ignore the skill with the ball at his feet. Musiala had a hot start to the season and kind of cooled down, but he's still been as entertaining as ever. The way he dribbles still doesn't make much sense to me. Every time he charges at somebody, you think he's going to get his skinny little legs snapped and lose the ball, then he just swerves around them. It's fucking ridiculous. He's easily one of the best watchers in Europe on a good day. Some of the midfielders that are hella entertaining, there's Wirtz, of course. Can't forget about him. There's also Reinders from Milan. They've been pretty ass all year, but he's been one of the bright spots. He dribbles like somebody much shorter than him. There is some flaws in his game, like his effort defensively sometimes, but the higher you move him up the pitch in the midfield, the better he gets as an overall player, in my opinion. Him and then Leao when he actually feels like he make Milan entertaining, but then again, you really never know when Leao is going to be feeling it, and this season has been hella 50-50 like usual. One week he looks like Ronaldinho, the next week he looks like fucking Ahmed Musa. Palmer's been in a rough patch for a while, and he's definitely struggling right now, but yes, he does remain one of the better entertainers in Europe when he's not shitting himself. Chelsea got a lot of work to do building around him. I'm gonna be real. Also, shout out to Jamie Gittins. He's only 20 years old, but he's been one of the most explosive dribblers in Europe this season, and it's not being mentioned nearly as much as it should be. I don't know if that's because Dortmund kind of stink. I mean, they're sitting in 8th place, or if it's because his output isn't really up there yet. He only just broke his goal drought like a week or two ago. He hadn't scored in months before that. Either way, he definitely deserves to at least be mentioned here. I tuned into a few Dortmund games here or there for him, and he's one of those players with hella talent and hella potential, but if you signed him now, you'd have to really develop him. Let me know if I missed anybody, y'all, because I've been so busy, there's probably a few breakout talents that might have flown under my radar. That's exactly what I'm talking about, though. I feel like now there's more and more games I have to watch because of how many entertaining players are, and I want to keep track of all of them, but the number keeps going up. I've been watching Lyon for Cherki, Dortmund for Gittins sometimes, Barca for everybody, PSG for everybody, Leverkusen for Wirtz, and Alonso too. First half of the season, I was watching Frankfurt for Marmouche. Now I watch them for Ekitike. I watch Leipzig for Simons sometimes. The list has been getting longer throughout the season, and I can't help but feel like the last couple of years, it wasn't this long. Let me know if you think I'm bugging in the comments. Thanks for watching, y'all. No, I'm not going to disappear again. I felt like such a deadbeat those few weeks I was gone. I'm sorry, but I really was busy. I have a video in the vault for next week, I promise. I'm going to catch y'all later. Adios.